May is my birthday month, so it has to have 5 weeks. You know what I mean? The Lord just made it that way. Sister D, good to see you. All right, please welcome Dr. Roger Ball.
Good evening, everyone. I am running for my life. It's good to be here. Thank you, beloved. Put your hands together for Sister Carlicia, who has just been, and the team up there, who has been amazing in helping us out each week. So I want to spend some time really in recap and just spend some time talking a little bit about, for those of you who have been in person, thank you, my brother. For those of you who have been online, those who are online, thank you so much for joining us. So a big part of the work is really, someone says if you want to go far, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And this work here is not a fast pace. It's going slow so that we could get farther along together. And I just want to pause to say how grateful I am. I heard Bishop talking about folks who are coming out or in absentia. What we do know is that this requires a confrontation of the self, right? And I think it's hard for folks to sort of step into that space, sometimes not willingly. It's hard for people to step in. How incredibly brave all of you have been in really confronting and stepping in the space. Last night I did a training down in Harlem with a church. It's a Baptist coalition. It was like, they call them conference. And so they have they have a bunch of their churches that came together at St. Luke's down on that's Morningside Avenue. We're talking about much of these things, and to hear the stories remains the same about people. I'm always so fascinated when I see folks in their 50s and 60s, and in the case of last night, 70s, who are saying, I am just beginning to confront the self. One elderly lady said that my grandma loved my brother. She said, my grandma used to say that boys bring something, help, girls bring trouble. She said, girls bring trouble. And she said, the only thing I had to offer my grandma, this was last night, she was telling this story. She said, the only thing I had to offer her was my voice. And so if I was singing, she wasn't targeting me. And so she said, I would just sing for her all the time. It reminds me of what Will Smith said about his father and how cruel he was, and that he learned to be the jokester in the family. Because if he was telling jokes, his father wasn't targeting his mom. And so it's quite interesting the way we adapt, the way we juxtapose, the way we contort, the way we devise survival mechanism. Bishop, in a way, it's like people who don't know how to read. And I have family members who are not readers, and it's absolutely no judgment for all kinds of reasons. Back in the day, some people were pulled out of school because you could stay with your academic stuff. We need the ground to be tilled. We need people to go take out the livestock and to carry water. And so it's incredible how people, let's say, who don't know how to read, you have no idea the way they move through life, the adjustments that they make. They see signs that they don't know, the way they memorize things on the first go, the way they tell people, I left my glasses, can you help me to do this? So all kinds of stuff that they do. I still remember when I was a little boy. Here's an example. When I was a little boy, I got so frustrated with asking my sister which way my shoes go. I'm talking about when I was like 4. I got frustrated because she got frustrated of having to tell me every morning. So you know what I would do when I came home from school? I would take them off and put them the same way I took them off and hid them someplace, just so that I didn't have to ask. That's like the way people who have been traumatized, that's how we go through the world. That's how they learn to contort and to sell a narrative and to tell a story that they believe works for them. Even if it's killing them in one area, it works for them in another area. And so the example of an elderly person really telling their stories, and so I really want to spend some time, and I'm going to talk a little bit, and then really, and there's nothing new here in terms of the slides. And I want you guys, so those of you who are interested, please, whatever means and modalities you use, please share these slides, because it's an opportunity for you to go back and pull them apart for yourselves. And so I want to spend some time really just reflecting with you about what you've learned, where you are, what are you thinking, what the work do you think that is undone. And then we have some pieces of paper here. I'm just going to ask you to write one kind word to your younger self. And we're going to just invite you to just write it, and then you're going to, or a sentence, something that you would tell your younger self as we bring this workshop series to a close. One of the areas that I think is, of course, we talked about forgiveness. I don't think these are in the order. This idea of returning to the, one way to put it is to return to the present. Another way to say it is to return to the past. But I like the idea of returning to the present, only to the extent that the past is here with us, right? The past is here, and so when we say return to the present, we're talking about sort of doing this circle to come right back. You ever been lost and you said, wait a minute, I'd pass this. I've been here before. It's like, oops. It's like, and so you have to go there to get here. Nobody gets here. The preachers would say the way to it is through it. Right? The way to it is through it. So this was one of the pieces that we talked about, of this idea of the wounded inner child and how we live out the wounded. One lady said as well that I have had so many losses in my family, so many deaths, that I really struggle to allow people to come close to me. Like, I will love you from a distance. But the minute you start getting too close, I'm like, okay. This is like, you're being the most. You're being too much. And part of the reason for that is because people who get close to you stand the greatest chance of hurting you the deepest. And so one survival mechanism that we sometimes develop is like no attachment. You ever hear people say that? Right? I just have associates. I just have but if you think about love, there's an old or middle-aged black woman who is from the South. She's a poet. Her name is Georgina Johnson. And she says, I want to die while you love me. While you still care for me. I want to die while you love me. She would go on to say, who would care to live until love has nothing more to ask for and nothing more to give? I want to die while you love me, while you still care for me. So this notion that we have to get really close. And part of our healing and recovery. And so for that lady who keeps people here, the things that she needs the most is that deep and abiding intimacy. And the things that she resists the most is that deep and abiding intimacy. Another definition for that is torture. It's self-preservation, but how preserving is it? Like, how preserving is it? Let me just say one more thing. And there's something that we need to talk to. Should I? I don't know if I should go there. I'm going to go there anyway. There's something that we should talk to, I think, especially to our sisters in our churches. So a lot of our sisters, right, go through life not having find the kind of love that they deserve. And a big part of it is out of being afraid. Somebody say, I prefer to have my little apartment that I could go in and don't have to answer to anybody. I prefer to, I could put this here and nobody tells me. I come in as I please and I go out as I please. And that narrative. But love requires some risk.
It's funny that's true. People say that, but it's still not happy.
That's the next part.
But the question I wanted to ask you earlier, based on what you were saying, that same narrative applies to church too, right? Mm-hmm. For example, I remember you shared a story, I think it was last week, about the people that were in the church and what they did and how that there was reconciliation.
Yeah.
People who are related to a leader watch that leader also, him or her, whoever it may be, go through that. So I'm sure your children, they watch that. So they don't properly connect to people in the church because they're like, mom and dad is giving their whole entire life to this thing,
yep,
and they're cutting them up and they're talking about them. And, yep, and then the other time, then there's people who are in church who've been hurt by previous churches. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I'm just going to come to that church. I like the word. I like the worship. Yep. And I'm out.
Yep.
I don't want to connect with anybody.
That's right.
Because I'm not looking for any drama.
Yeah, that's right. And I want to take the first part and then maybe the second part. And it's very, very real. Here's the example. The example is like when, let's say you have a significant other and you get into a big shouting match in the middle of, I don't know, Baychester Plaza. It's like it's just next to the sofa, right? It's a big, and you are with your extended family, your brothers, your sister, whomever it is. You're in this big shouting match. And let's say your kids or your auntie or whomever, they see this thing and they're like, yo, auntie or uncle, you gonna let them? You gonna let them? Yo. And then both of you who are shouting, at some point, we talk about the brain often, the brain simmers down. And one person says, I think I overreacted. And the other person says, yes, you did. But guess what? I did too. Yeah, we did. What are we going to do about it? And there you are, reconciled, resolution, right? You're in a better place. And in the meantime, the trauma of those that you love, watching this exchange, it's like, I don't like to use violent language, but it's poetry nonetheless. It's like taking, like when they put those hot iron and they brand those cattle, those cows, that with the markings on them. It's like taking it, those that you love who was looking on, it's like taking a hot iron and branding their brain. You don't understand the depth and the degree of the suffering that they feel from what they've seen, because they are left with the rift. They're left with the shouting or the yelling or the physical attack. They're not a part of the nobody and we fail to understand that true reconciliation, true healing, it must forever include the bystanders. Healing and recovery from trauma must forever include those who are standing off to the side and are bearing witness. Because the child who bears witness to their mother or father's beating is traumatized by it as well, and sometimes even more. Because you may be fighting back, but that kid over here is like this. And so we fail to loop in all those that are there. And so to answer your question, yes. I could, like, I'm at the place, like, I'm a bigger man. I could say, yeah, we're good. We're good? We're good. And that good may be like, in some other instance, that good may be like, we're pleasant, you good, I'm good, we're going to worship, but we're going to keep it pushing. I'm not inviting you over to my backyard. Like, that's right, we're good. We're good. But whilst I'm shaking hand, now you come up to my kid and try to shake my kid's hand, and my kid be like, that's right. That's right. Because the reconciliation that took place did not include the bystanders who, are you following what I'm saying? And so you're thinking about when, I don't have any kids in here, right? Good. I'm going to say something that some may even deem inappropriate. It's like when you have two grown folks in a room having sex, and you have a kid who is next door and don't understand what's going on, and they hear all kind of bawling and shouting. That child could be very much traumatized. That child could be traumatized because their brain is not understanding that is joy unspeakable. I'm glad tonight is the last night. You follow what I'm saying? Their brain don't understand that is joy unspeakable that is happening on the other side. They think that someone is being hurt a great deal. And so, so to answer I think I got to it. It's been a circuitous way to get to it, but I think I got to it. So, I like the questions. I think I want to hear questions and comments. I think let's run with that. No, you. Why don't you listen? They're not going to let you get away. Oh, while you're going there, my wife is not here because she's traveling. She's in Florida.
And you have a closing, right?
Friday, yes. Yes. Pray for me that everything goes well.
I was thinking, if the prodigal sons, the two sons,
Yeah.
if when the youngest son came back, if the father did include the elder son, maybe things would have been different.
Yes, because and sometimes we fault the elder son, but here's how I would put it. Even if the rest of the money that's in the bank was mine, which it was, because his dad said, like, oh, everything that I have remaining is yours, right? There's nothing that, even though his action kind of says that, well, I mean, do this. It seems as though he's like getting some new money. But there's something to be said, and can I just tell you that? I don't consider myself a very good theologian, but I know applications. That's what I think the Lord has gifted me with. I know application. And so I'm not going to go tell you all the Greeks and the Hebrews, and people could barely, I could barely read English, much less to go explain Greek and Hebrews to you. You all could figure that out. I'm serious. right? Like you could do that. But there's something to be said about, and we see it in our own families. We see some people who do little to nothing for their family members. And when they come by, they treat it like royalty. And you who are there every single day, that is doing all the work, you barely get recognitions for the investments that you make. That is the same story. And sometimes when you're working so hard, you forget to take a break. Any of you are like that? You're doing so much work that you wouldn't even stop to enjoy the fruits of your labor because you feel guilty. You feel guilty for taking that fattened calf and say, I'm going to have a good lamb chop. Yeah, my mother used to do this, and here's the modeling that was not always healthy. She would allow all of the kids to eat first, and whatever was left at the bottom, she would take that. I ain't doing it. Yeah, right? Or in some families where the husband eats first. No, some of that is culture. And so the prodigal son is a very serious story. And so, I mean, I could preach that from many different angles. I could preach it from the youngster. What are you fussing with him for? How many of you get tired of being home and want to go explore the world? Yes. How many of you have kids who have gone off to college and they busted? You know, like they really flatlined. They went all out. They went buck wild. And you have to go get them. Yeah, you have to go get them because they don't know what it feels like to be judicious. Because you've always taken care of them. You've done everything for them. That young man have never not had enough. That his father was rich. It was like a well pouring in, so he could take whatever he want, whenever he want. Now he took something and he doesn't understand the value of money. He didn't understand investment. He felt good because people loved him for what he had rather than for who he was. And at some point, everything ran out. And so he will have a story to tell that his brother will never have. Yo, I've traveled halfway around the world. Hit some hard time, but I came back home and I was loved. Right? It's like Peter who says, Jesus, if it's you, let me come. Peter is the only one that have that story. I stepped on the water. Nobody else. He fell, but he has a story to tell. So yes, you're right. That healing process needed to have been taken place as a family where they are able to sit down. And you know what would have been really, really nice is if the father and the older brother stood at the gate. It sounds like Joseph and his brothers all had the same story. The same stories. Yeah? Somebody got offended because someone showed preferential treatment. And I think good teaching, really, the greatest, and I've said this for a long time, and Walter Brueggemann said this, that the greatest challenge for any and every preacher is to take an old story and tell it differently. All preachers know that. Am I going to tell the story that says Elijah was in the valley of dry bone and he said, Son of man, can these bones live? He says, oh, Lord, you know it. He said, prophesy unto the four winds. And then I prophesied, and bones, big bones, small bones, white bones, brown bones, bones over here, bones over there, bones everywhere. Bones get up walking to find the rest of their... Sounds really good, isn't it? But what if I go in a direction that says, have you ever felt pulled apart? Have you ever felt like you don't know if you're coming or going? To use disembodiment, to use detachment. Have you ever felt scattered? Have you ever felt so removed from your authentic? You've fallen so low that your morals are over there The teachings of the church are over there. The teachings of your grandparents are over there. And you've just fallen so low in your addictions. You've gotten caught up and you've been picked apart by circumstances. That's a different kind of way of thinking about it rather than just parroting bones, bones, these bones. Right? Others. Others, questions, thoughts.
So I have a question, Dr. Bob. Why do you think it's such a challenge for people to confront the self, as you're saying? Because I'm looking at so many people that have been through these sessions and have been consistently missing. And I'm wondering, I'm talking about faithful people, so that begins to make sense to me.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, this is not this is not easy work. This is really, really hard work. And if this would just be like pulling the Band-Aid or something off of it. The work, all of the work will now begin, right? All of the work on the self. And I think that there are like some key pieces that we've talked about. Like what I mentioned just now about how it is that we contort ourselves to really fit. And I gave, one of my first sessions, I talk about the man who went to the tailor and the tailor gave him a suit that is so big for him, but the tailor says, just do this hand like this, just do this hand like that, bring this leg in like that, and just walk. And they said, and he went outside and someone said, wow, for a man that crooked, the suit fits him perfectly. So he bends his body to fit something that was never his. And so part of our journey is to really, and so it's hard. Like, one way to think about is, like, think about how many of you struggle with feedbacks. Like, the minute someone sit down and said, you know, I think you could have done better. A lot of shame. Right? A lot of shame. I gave this speech yesterday at Fordham University, and I promise you, and then I was running all over the place. I went down to Harlem. I gave another presentation. And then I got home, and before I fell asleep, I'm rewriting the speech in my head. And then I got up at 5 o'clock this morning. I said, I missed it. I missed the conclusion. I could have nailed it like this. I could have constantly thinking about. But for me, the business of self-reflection, and for me, it's not a wounding reflection, right? It's like constantly, my brain works like that. I want to see how I could make it better. I want to see how I could be a better father. I want to see how I could be a better husband. I want to see, in Spanish, it's dígame, tell me. Like, tell me what I need to know. Tell me what I can do to make things better. And for some people, that's a challenge, to really confront themselves. People will love you until you tell them that you need to work on this. And sometimes we think that we talk about it's defensive, but it's hard. It's really, really hard for people to acknowledge that there's some things because they interpret it oftentimes as shame, right? Like, and part of it is to be able to say, I want for you to fix this. I'm not saying that something is wrong with you. I just want for you to improve on doing this. But we automatically interpret those things as a problem with the self. And the only way for me to respond to that is to lash out. Is to say, well, look who is talking. The pot is calling the kettle black. Look, you have some nerve. Last year, December, on a Wednesday, at 7 p.m., you did the exact same thing, and I didn't say anything. But you think that you're better than everybody else, and you're now trying to correct me? Who you think you are? By the time you lay them out and stretch them nicely, they won't know if they're coming or going. They won't even remember, and at the root of that, which is very effective, at the root of that is that it's too difficult for me to confront the self. And so the same thing is true for here. You guys are really courageous. You're really courageous. Because finally, that's why you see how you guys got excited when I talk about Elijah and them bones. Can I tell you, it means absolutely nothing if there's no application. It means absolute, and your pastor been echoing this since the very first series that I came here and did, that church needs to be structured differently. And someone was saying to me earlier, I can't remember, one of my former staff members, I was sitting on the Van Wyck Expressway, and we were talking about, like we says, give and it shall come back to you, good measure, pressed down, shaking together. Right? We're talking about this portion that you give to the Lord, but shouldn't we be teaching about the 90% or the rest of it? What are you giving it to? What are you doing with it? How are you being good steward of that? And so at our worst, we just want, could you just give me my 10%, right? Like once I get my 10%, it's good measure, pressed down, shaking together, and running over. This 10% that you've handed off to me, that's your good measure. That's your pressed down. That's your shaking together, and that's your running over. And I don't care one bit about the rest that you have. Does that sound right? That doesn't sound right. We must also teach people like what you do with the stewardship, what you do with the rest. And I know pastor's been preaching about that as well. Thoughts, others?
I have a question about responses. So when someone says something to me that I don't necessarily like, right, I think I take so much time trying to process it and trying to frame it in a way that can sit better so that the emotions that I have are not so big, but I think it takes me so long to process it that the time has passed before I've decided that it really wasn't okay, right? When it's okay, it's fine to take a long time to process it because then I answer you properly. But when it's not okay, I think it takes me so long to come to that conclusion that it feels like, or now I can't come back and say, I didn't like when you said that because it just took so long. But then after that happens so many times, in my head, I separate from you and you no longer exist anymore. And you don't know why you don't exist for me. Like, it's not like I killed you or anything. You just were never born. How do I speed up that response so that I'm able to tell people I don't like that without it being disrespectful? Because I think my disrespectful thoughts come faster than the nice thoughts. It's just me. How do we...
So one of the first questions I would ask you is, your disrespectful thoughts comes faster than your respectful thoughts.
Absolutely.
Here's a question though, which are you most likely to let out first?
The not so nice ones, unless I stop and process it. And the process takes a little long because now I'm reframing the words and I'm saying, I'm checking it against your character. Is that how you meant to say it? Am I receiving this wrong? Did you say this wrong? And I'm going back and forth in my head. But by the time I get to, you were really trying to be a jerk, the moment has already passed.
So I want to ask the question again.
All right.
Right? I hear you, which one wants to come out? Does the disrespectful one come out or does the silence come out?
The silence come out first
Right.
now. I've
Right.
learned to let the silence be first
Right.
now.
And it probably has been for a long time.
A
too.
long time.
Right. And so the question then becomes, and so that becomes a survival mechanism,
Agreed.
right? It reduces your anxiety. It keeps things, rather than having you in constant turmoil. So you turn the rage inward rather than outward, right? So you own it because you're processing it.
Mm-hmm.
You're processing it not to send it anywhere. You're processing it to own it, to keep it, right? And so part of the question would be, what's the worst thing that could happen?
You're not going to like it. The other person is not going to like it very much.
Are you going to like it?
It depends on the day. Sorry. It does. It depends on the day.
Okay,
and it
fine.
depends
Let's
on the
pick
person.
Monday. let's
It
pick a
depends on
Monday.
the circumstance. Because sometimes I think we have the potential to be irrational, right? So we don't want to let the irrational thing come out first, and then we say, oh, that's not how you meant it? Oops, sorry.
Are you irrational?
Sometimes.
So I think part of the work, and what I'm really probing at a little bit, is that I think, they said half the problems we have never happen. Half the things we think are going to happen never happen. And so we spend a lot of time worrying and thinking about what would happen, but they just never happen. And so if we are people who are non-confrontational, and there are different kinds of people, right? Like people who are good with words, right? I consider myself to be relatively good with words. I have language. It's one of my strengths. I have access to language. Math I have no access to, but I have access to language. I know how to pull words and string them together and tell a story. Some people who struggle with access to language, and that's why you can see, and this is common with man too, that's why you could see a man will sit down like this, and his wife will say, what are you thinking about? He says, nothing. He says, yeah, but you're sitting there looking. He says, okay. No, but what are you real? What's going on in that head of yours? Like, I'm just here. You have to be thinking about something. Tell me. Like, he's weird. Because he doesn't have access to language. Not in the way you do. And so it puzzles you. So how could he just sit there like that and don't say anything? He could sit there for 2 hours and don't feel the need to say A or B to you. And you could have written a chapter and a verse by that time, and you just don't understand it. And so sometimes when we don't have access to language, what we do have access to is deep thoughts. And so you spend a lot of time ruminating and processing, but it's too risky for you to say something. And you think the world is going to come to an end, but it won't. And so you've just learned as a survival mechanism to save yourself from the discomfort and the pain that rift might cause. Like, how many of you feel awful after a fight? Some people feel pumped after a fight. No, it's true. Some people could have a really good fight and says, now let's go have dinner. And others of you will be stewing for 5 days. And so for those of us who really struggle with being on the bad side of people or having people not like us, or we internalize some of that stuff rather than just saying it. And sometimes that is rooted in our own childhood, because in the house that we grew up in, people didn't really express their feelings, or your opinions didn't really count. Shut up, nobody wants to hear from you. Kids are to be seen and not heard. And so the business of accessing language. But I would say take the risk. I'm not telling you to go cuss people out. But I wonder what it would be and feel like for you to begin to say what you feel. And maybe this may not come out right. It may not come out the way I want it to come out. But I'm just telling you, that's not, it's terrible what you said. Let me find another word. That made me feel really bad. Let me find another word. Made me feel really sad. The process of arriving on a quicker, reducing the processing time is actually practicing saying things at the risk, right? Especially, Bishop said that he's not going to get worked up. He's going to think about it, but then he's going to have the conversation. You just process it and internalize it, and the other folks go on about their business, but then guess what you did? You get back at them. Because when they think that nothing is wrong, what you do, you said, I got something for you. I know exactly how to deal with you. And so they're going along and say, hey, yo. And you're like, you're dead to me. And people can't understand it. And if you should say to them, let me tell you why you're dead to me. You're dead to me because, and the person's going to say, what? Really? It wasn't even like that. I didn't think so. But that's how some of us roll. We don't give people second chances either. Someone says, there's a phrase that my wife's folks use from Guyana. They said you play dead to see who is going to come to your funeral or something like that. Like it's this kind of thing where you once they've crossed, that's it. You're like, it's over. And of course, that depends on the relationships as well. People who you care deeply about and who care about you, you're more likely to take it and just leave it, or you're more likely to tell them that it's a problem.
I have a question. So what about when, or what do you call it, or how do you deal with a person that if you say something to them, you think before you say it to them, you try to use the right words, you play it in your head before you say it, and they still seems to be bothered by what you say. And then somebody else will tell them the same thing, a different way, use different words, but they always take offense to what somebody tells them. Is it something wrong with person? Because that's my conclusion, that's my diagnosis, something wrong with them.
Or you, something is wrong with all of us. The example you gave, is that two different people telling them the same thing essentially?
Yeah, two different
Okay.
people. Like
Right.
if I go and
That's
say
right.
something, and then like if she tell them, but just two different times,
That's
but they
right.
always take offense or always feel like you're trying to
That's right.
hurt them or say degrade them or
That's right.
something like that.
I really appreciate that question. I'll give you an example, and it has happened more times than I would like to admit it. When I was an assistant principal, or this time I was actually a school social worker, I remember this young man, tall. He was probably about 6-something, very, very tall young man. And some explosive, fight went on, and they called the police. And it was on the 4th floor. They called the police, and they had 4 police officers surrounded that young man. It's 8th grader. And here's one of the things that I know about kids, right? Like, I know kids. And because you're 6'4", the world is oftentimes afraid of you. And they see you as a threat. When I see a 6'something 8th grader, I know that what? That could be my son. That's somebody's child, right? And so they're like have him cornered. I mean, really, really cornered. And they're like, no, we're taking you off this floor one way or another. And he's raging, and he's raging. And I walked up. I said, excuse me, officer. I said, like, our folks says, you don't put your hand in my face. You put your hand in my face, I'll fight you. Right? Like, that's disrespectful. I did like this. I said, you're coming with me to my office right now. And I turned around and started walking. I didn't even look behind me. The police officers peeled back, and that young man followed me down the 4th flight of stairs, around the corner into 131 where my office was. And I held him, and he wept in my arms. What I saw in that office, there's no part of him that knew how to show that upstairs, because he knows he needs to fight. But with me, he understood that you couldn't be my son, and I've got you. And so my entering that space, it was his rescue. And people are more likely to listen to others. Hear this. Some people are more likely to listen because of authority. You could send, as the bishop of the house, you could send someone to tell somebody to do something, and until they use the bishop's name, they said, nah, I'm busy. And then you come around the corner and says, grace and peace, beloved. From God the Father and our Lord Jesus Christ, I believe the Lord is asking you to do da. Say, yes, gladly. I felt the same way. I just knew this was going to happen. In the meantime, they're like, nope, don't ask me to do anything. So, some of you know it's true. How many of you know it's true? It's true, isn't it? So, some people are moved by power, others are moved by love, right? And some are moved, and some are moved by trust. Right? Look at those commercials that you see. Sometimes you see, like they say, those commercials with some, I don't know, whatever. Think about what medicine or whatever it is they're selling, right? They always have this guy in a lab coat. And then somewhere at the bottom it says, participants are not actually real doctors. They're actors. Because our brain associate that moment with, I could take that to the bank because he's wearing a white lab coat. And so sometimes people don't trust your expertise, not because of anything that you haven't done, but like they don't see you as the expert. They don't see you as trustworthy. They don't see you as having the information. And sometimes they just think that, look, I'll just give one swift example here, and I was actually thinking about, right? And I'm not saying it I promise you, I'm not saying it to boast or anything like that. When I go into buildings across New York City, like those people know me. I was in Harlem there last night, and there's a middle-aged woman that came up to me and said, I just reached out to my son. You're Dr. Ball? My son talks about you all. I got him in the DOE. I mentored him. Like, I'm all over the place. People coming. There's all kinds of people all over this tri-state region and beyond are tuning in to see me give the commencement address. My kids, they're like, Dad is going to happen. They're like, ask me how many of them even watch that thing. I don't even think those kids watch it. For them, their father is just like, so I think sometimes when we're so familiar, we don't see. Like sometimes our families don't even see the greatness. They don't see the work, because how do they define it when they've lived it all their lives? They just know that they love you. And that's it. Or they just know that you're like in their orbit. They don't see you as all of that. And so like, none of them watched my speech yesterday. In fact, they haven't even mentioned it to me yet. I mean, I don't feel it, and I really don't feel any way about it, but that's the point I'm making, right? Like, sometimes people just, they don't think. They want someone that has the information. And you have your kids like that. You have your kids like that. You'll talk to them until you're blue, and then someone else comes. That happened to one of my sons. His uncle said one thing to him, and you know what that boy did? That boy took his uncle's words and put it on his door as a motivation. Can you believe that? It's all the things that I'm teaching you and telling you every single day. You take these words and you put it on the door. Like, whatever works for you, buddy. Yeah. 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 And that's why when we talk about trauma and recovery, most trauma takes place in relationships. Not all, but most trauma takes place in relationship, and the dichotomy is that most traumas must be healed where? In relationships. Huh? Most traumas take place inside relationship, and when you think about parents and older siblings and grandparents and all of those people who traumatize you, here is the real work. And nobody, that we're not talking about it often, and the clinical books are not talking about it often. Those who have injured those that they love, the worst pain and suffering oftentimes comes from those who love you the most, and you love them the most. And it's in those relationships that oftentimes you need to be healed. My sister, I don't know if you had your hand up. Yeah.
At what point do you stop being the mediator in your family? So a few things I've seen over the years, growing up, the relationship with my mom and her siblings, and even within my siblings. So my mom is the oldest for her mom. And so my grandmother gave my mom to her dad and went off and had other children and got married. So my mom is the oldest. And so within my family, my mom has 3 girls and 3 boys. My mother's relationship has been impacted with her siblings, so she did not grow with her siblings. She found out in high school, met her siblings, predominantly girls and a brother. And so within my family, 3 boys and 3 girls. So with the dynamic with my mother's interaction or lack thereof with her siblings, I see that carry over into her interaction with her daughters, as far as her sons. She has like great relationship with my 3 brothers, but with her daughters, it's such a hard core. Like, you guys are ladies, you can go and fend for yourself. And so I see that same hard exterior with her sisters. And so I've grown up seeing dissension and things not being nice being said about my mom, that my aunts would say. And, respect and so forth, I never felt that it was okay for me to say something, because at the end of the day, like, I'm the niece.
Yeah.
And
At the end of the day, you're the child.
and I'm also the child. And now as I'm an adult, I still see that bearing. And so I've tried to intervene on both ends.
Yep.
With my mom trying to come to terms with her siblings, her sisters, and also with my sisters. And I find that I'm caught in the middle, not necessarily wanting to know the depth of it, but having them come to a point where they can hash it out and so forth. But then I get in the middle and try to create that, and then it seemed like I create the chaos with my sisters and with my aunt. So then at what point I'm trying to figure out, where do I don't intervene, but the problem lies. The problem is not being fixed.
Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing. Are you familiar with the genogram? So a genogram is, I don't know if the folks upstairs could find an image of a genogram and throw it up for me if you're able. If you can, that too is okay. A genogram is this intergenerational, usually spanned at least 3 generations, that is used to capture the historical relationships amongst families. So it includes things like who was sent to live with whom, relationship between father and mother, grandparents, who was an alcoholic, who died from this, who had died in early death, right? Who was the child out there someplace that nobody knew about? Who was that, right? And so it paints the picture across multiple generations for the express purpose of helping you to go back to that word that we used before, to look for what? Patterns. To look for patterns. And it's incredible how eye-opening those, genograms often. It's usually frightening. Because what you do is you begin to slow the stories down in such a way, excavate the stories, and you're like, whoa, okay, so that's what this is about. Why is it that the women in our families love the men, but they don't like the women? Like what is that, right? And in other families, it's the opposite. The women all stick together and kick out the men. Right? Yeah. Where, like what I said, this lady was probably maybe 70. And she said, my grandmother loved my brother, but she never loved me. Why? And she said she couldn't understand why, because they saw girls as going to give them trouble, they're going to get pregnant, all of these things are going to happen, as though someone else is not doing it. And so a genogram can sometimes help you to paint a picture and understand it. And by the way, the last thing I'll say is that the minute you try to disrupt that, you get sucked into it, right? Like you become a part of, you're already a part of it. You're already a part of it. And so what you have to really do, at minimum, the things for you to start doing is to say, how do I learn to understand it and not become a part of the narrative, right? How do I not be? And one of the ways for you to do that is to ensure that you are as best as possible developing healthy relationships with those women in your life, right? They may not have it with each other, but you can work on seeing how you could improve your relationship with each of them. Good luck. Right? Yeah. Others? I love that image. There it is. So you guys are good up there. I mean, they're just like, they're on point. So this is what a genogram looks like, right? So it may have on your grandfather, so this is like multiple, so on this side is one side of your family, and on this side, it's your mother's side, right? Yeah, this is your father's side over there, your mother's side over here, and so you have the grandparents, and then down you have the number of kids that they've had, right? And so on and so forth. And then these folks here get together. That would be you, your significant other, so on and so forth, and then the kids that they have. And you would do the same thing, but the thing about this is just sort of the basic one. Others of them like have a key that tells you, for example, this relationship. Let's say your uncle and your auntie, what kind of relationship they had, right? Or this and your significant other, maybe a child here died, right? And so on and so forth. And so it has broken lines, it has straight lines, and it really allows you to take this sort of historical or panoramic view of your family systems, and you're able to, and there you have it, right? So those guys are really good up there, right? Right? So it shows people who have died, relationships that are severed, and there would be a code. I can't read these, but is this substance abuse? I can't see it. Okay, so if you look at this one here, so find for me this person who has substance abuse. Don't. This person here, and I can't see what the darken means here. Right, so this person abused substance, but they were also, that's right. And so yeah, right, and so you can, right. So you could look across multiple generations, and I do this for my students, and it creates a crisis for them, oftentimes, because finally they said, oh, I didn't even think about that, and sometimes they have to go back and talk to their family. Imagine talking to your aunties, and what stories, I'm curious, what stories have they told us to where the root of this is coming from? Because she was sent off. To live with her dad. Yeah, yeah. I'm listening. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. They did. because she has not, because his history with females, including her sisters, has been one that is fractured. And I tell you, I think when I was 15 or so, my mom migrated to the United States, and I'll never forget it because my mom, I'm a mama's boy. I'll admit to it. Like I'm like really, really close. Even now, I'm really, really close to my mom. I'm getting ready to go. I said, Raj, you want some food? She said, Raj. My wife is not here, and so she loves to take over, like cooking me food when my wife is not around. I said, Raj, you want some food? But when I was like 15, my mom migrated to the United States, and it was only for a year. And we're so close. For that 1 year, when I migrated to the United States, it's unbelievable the separation that I felt from my mom. I couldn't explain it. There's this great divide that it took a little bit for me to feel reconnected to her. My mom did nothing, right? She didn't do anything wrong, other than came ahead for whatever reason based on the paperwork and whatever went. My brother and I didn't come in on the first batch, so to speak. And so, but I remember this separation that I felt. It was so foreign to me because like I was always with my mom. And it took a long time, not a long time, but it took probably a year for that bond to be reestablished. So just think about and that's why, and it's no judgment. I think parents have to give very serious consideration when they send off their kids to live with other people. Like it's a very, very serious thing. Like sending off your kids. And I know sometimes there are all kinds of struggles and you do what you do to survive, but you have to really think about the consequences of when people send their kids to go live with other people, it creates generational havoc. It really does. And them kids will tell you as adults, and as kids they will tell you. And I told this story about the little girl that's standing in my office, and the mom said, the mom sent her to Yonkers to go live with her father and her father's wife. And she said they treated me badly. He had a nice house, beautiful home, plenty of food in the house. But mom was homeless. And so mom says, baby girl, I cannot have you sleeping from couch to couch in people's homes. I need stability for you. And I'll never forget it. That little girl, mom was standing in the threshold of my office door. And mom says, you will never forgive me. You'll never forgive me. And that child said, she said, I wanted to be with you, Mom. She said, I wanted to be with you. She said, I would prefer to have slept in the subway on a cardboard box with you than to go and live with them. You don't know what they did to me. And you know what? The truth of the matter is that kid probably would have fared healthier sleeping in the subway with her mother than go live with a father that she felt didn't love her and a wife that treated her poorly. So there's something to be said. We do what we do to survive, but I would say be very careful with that because it costs. And sometimes the price is so great that we may not be able to cash up the money to pay the cost of what it means. Because the first thing that those persons are going to feel is that you didn't love me enough to keep me. I think about kids in foster care. You acting up? You acting up? I'm going to tell the agents to come and get you. What? Anyone ever said they're going to kick you out? I remember during COVID, and I'm going to confess I did it. Like at the start of the pandemic, one of my sons, he was just going with all of his friends. He couldn't take being in the house anymore. And I waited for him like the father and the prodigal son. I waited for him at the door. And I said to him, and he turned his key and met me looking at him like this. I'm talking about when people are dying, you know what I'm talking about? There is no, there's no vaccine, there's no Like, we couldn't even figure out why people are dying like so, right? There's not enough ventilators. You know, I have my mom at home who, you know, an elderly woman, and I met him at the door. And I said, I love you. I love you with all of my heart. But right here, right now, I need for you to make a decision. I need for you to decide if you're going to keep us safe in this house, or if you're going to go out and continue to run with your friends. This is life and death. I can't have it. And if you choose to hang with those people, I will understand. I will even send you money. But you can't go back and forth. I can't have it. Because you wouldn't want for something to happen to anybody in this house. I need for you to decide right here, right now. That was the conversation I had. And I knew in entering that conversation what the consequences might have been. He might have called my bluff. But I needed to tell him that we can't have this. Right? And so we have to think about and sometimes we get so emotional that we really destroy people's. How many of you here still carry the words that your parents told you when you were kids? We talk oftentimes about our grandparents. My grandma said, if you want good, your nose have to run. One cocoa full basket. Anything is worth having, is worth working for. If it's worth doing the first time, it's worth doing well. I have all these little sayings, but there are some others that we really don't share as often, and they're devastating.
Question for you. It seems like you always know what to say and how to say it. Are there...
Not really.
Are there
Ask the
times-
question. Go ahead and ask the question. Are there times?
Are there times where you say things in a not so nice way, like where you lose it and you just kind of?
Oh,
it
plenty
seems
of
like you put
I'm
a
not
lot
here
of
to make
thought.
myself look bad. What do you take this thing for?
Seems like you got the answer for everything.
Come on. My name is Dr. Ball. I came here to teach. Actually, my kids will tell you, last December, we were down in Savannah. And all three of my young adult kids, they were in this moment. They were having this moment where they ganged up on me and my wife. And it's a terrible thing, but it's wonderful. I mean, have you ever had that? I mean, they said, we need to talk. Like, I guess this vacation is just going to go down the tubes. and they sat us down in the hotel room. And man, they piled it on. They says, Dad, we think you overreact sometimes. We think that, and we talk about anger, we think that sometimes you overreact and you can become explosive. And you don't always listen to us. That's what they said. They said, you don't always listen to us, and we would love for you to listen to us more. I said, okay, I'm listening. Right? And they start making all of these demands. I think a lot of it is wrong, but but what they feel is critically important, because what they feel is more important to me than my needing to prove them wrong. And so I'm like, listen, right? And so I listen. And then when we get finished, my wife and I, when they leave the room, my wife and I, we lock the door, we make sure they're not down the hallway. I said, you see this? You see this? You see this foolishness? You see this foolishness that we have to submit ourselves to? Right? And some of it is irrational. And some of it is outlandish. But you know what I discover? You know what I tell couples when I'm working with couples? It's actually one of the great, can I say this? It's one of the great mysteries of life. The world is not run on facts. The deepest and most abiding relationships have nothing to do with the truth. It has to do with how we perceive and what we feel. That's the truth. So if you're a very logical person, you're bad for relationships. It's true. If you need the facts all the time, you're gonna make well, I was gonna say lousy. You're gonna make a terrible, spouse or because what people perceive runs their world. It's true. People will forget the details of the story. This is how trauma works. People will forget all the details, and they will walk with the emotions like this. And emotion lives outside of memories. I wish if you would get that. Emotion has its own memory that is not always tagged to events or a series of events. It hovers like a cloud that hangs right in front of you. There's no strings, there's nothing around it, it just hangs. And so part of our responsibility is to listen in. But what I will tell you is I've gotten much better. I've gotten much better. When I was a younger man, when I was a much younger father, I think I was a poor father. And I think that as my kids have gotten older, as I've gotten older, I've learned to be a much calmer, thoughtful, reflective, I rarely ever really get to that place. But what I'm going to say as well in full transparency, raising two black boys, also require a certain degree of structure for their own survival. And so for me, I couldn't just allow them to do as they please. I had to really create the kind of structure for them. So I got it wrong plenty of times.
I have a question, comment, a whole bunch of stuff. But something you said about the fact that people experience based on their perception, and to bring it here within our church and or within groups of people that have to come together, where I was saying something earlier this week to someone that when someone comes to someone and they're trying to tell them about themselves, they become defensive. And becoming defensive, they become offensive.
Yeah.
And so we deal with this thing in church that you've offended me.
Yeah.
So as a church family, what are the tools or any tips that you can leave with us such that we can step out of ourselves to be able to, sorry, and I'm rambling because there's like so much in my head. Earlier, Sister Angela talked about relationship. And for me, I think we said it a lot like, oh, if I like you, you can come tell me anything and I won't feel bad, right? And I've been digging into it, and I think it's more about whether I feel safe with you or whether I trust you. It's not even about the relationship, right? And many people don't feel safe in environments that they're in, or they trust the people that they're around. So what can we do to build trust? What can we do to build safety? Because Bishop tells me I can't say this a lot, but like, you're not gonna like everybody. You're not gonna, like, you can say you good, but you can't come to my barbecue, right? But how do we build relationship that is respectful, that provides trust? Like, no. Now, because that's the thing, right? Like, we won't always be deep into each other to have relationship where we can come to you and say something, right? So some people are going to be new, some people are going to be here a long time. We're at different levels. We have trauma, we got issues, we got problems, and we're coming together and we're trying to work together towards a common good. So like, what are the tools, the tips, the things that you can leave with us such that we can start to relate to each other, understand each other, not get as offended as we normally do, give people more grace? I feel like this is such a great class, and it's like, as you said, I'm a person who likes application. So I've learned all of this. Like, how do we then put it into practice with each other so we can become a better Rhema community and become better individuals all over? So
That's a really great question. And I think the response is layered and it's thick. One, I would say that trust and relationship, there's two words you use. Trust and safety doesn't happen outside of relationality, right? And so that's the first thing. That happens within relationality. The second thing that I would say is that that's the beauty about the church. It's the beauty about the church. We come with all kinds of stuff. Like, we come with all kinds of stuff. We come unwell. And that's true. A lot of us come very, very unwell. And we come and we become what we've been. That's what we become what we've been. And so there's a great quote that they use for people in substance abuse. They say, wherever you go, there you are. Have you seen someone jump from one church to the next church? From one job to the next job? From one relationship to the next church? Wherever you go, there you are. Because the person, you are constantly taking yourself with you. And so I think part of it is not necessarily to create an environment where conflict doesn't exist. But it's to, because once you get people together, there's going to be conflict, right? But it's to create an environment where when conflicts do arise, that there is a, Martin Buber, the German theologian, he wrote a book that's called I Thou. Martin Buber talked about the space, right? Like he talked about the space, not necessarily a physical space, but a relationship space. And that relationship space, I want you to think of it as sort of imaginary. That relationship space travels, right? It travels with all of us. And so what Martin Buber makes the case is that when you have the relationship space, that if you know that in this church, right? And I've had to, and sometimes you wait, and of course I know nothing about your church, right? Like, so whatever I'm saying, I know nothing in terms of the nitty-gritty of your faith community. But sometimes we wait too long to say, that's not okay, because we want to be so nice to people. But we have a responsibility to them to say, we're not, that, and we could say it nicely, that's not a part of our culture. That's not a part of the way of being here. And so we're going to ask for you to refrain from that, right? And so the relationship space, when the relationship space exists, and so if you just think metaphorically with me, I'm going to put two people here, and they could talk about getting divorced. The relationship space exists. You could have the conversation. Or a child who doesn't feel loved by a parent, and they want to have the conversation. If the relationship space exists, or a husband who has run out of money, but the wife is sitting on a good inheritance. If the relationship space exists, and I want you to get this, it's the same relationship space that says, are we going to have McDonald's for dinner? Or are we going to go to some Brazilian restaurant? Where you turn over the green thing and they keep bringing more. They keep bringing more, right? If the relationship space exists, and I really mean this, when the relationship space exists, we could talk about anything, life, death. We could talk about past, present, future. We could talk about getting old. We could talk about dying. We could talk about living. We could talk about it all. The problem is oftentimes if the relationship space does not exist, and we try to force a conversation that we don't have the space, you follow me? We don't have the space. And the worst thing happens when people force a space that doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. And so the most important thing, I promise me this. When the space exists, anything is possible. That's what I tell my students at Fordham and wherever I teach. I said, this classroom, all ideas are welcome. All positions, defend it. State your claim, defend it. We're going to talk it through, as opposed to we're shutting it down. So if you have this space, you're able to say, right, and here's why it's important. You can talk to me. When the space exists, have you ever tried to, this is funny. Have you ever tried to, like someone really gets you so angry that now you try to have the conversation, but you're blowing off so much steam that it's just going to come out terribly. Because the space doesn't exist. I think about the time that at work, they took over my office. I was so mad. They took my office from me. Some folks move in, and they took all of my desk. It was like in August. So the day that I came back and my staff showed up, guess what? There are people sitting in my office. It was like a room that has multiple desks in there. And I don't have the relationship space with some guy in there. And he was sitting on one of my staff's desks. And this is me, Bishop. I walked in. I said, I'm sorry, this desk is taken. Honestly, this is what the guy did. He stood up. reached out his hand. He says, good morning, how are you doing today? I said, I blew it. Because in my anger, in my frustration, I said, I'm going to go straight in there as soon as I don't ask the man his name. I don't know who he is. And I just went and told him this desk is not his. Right. That's one of the examples. And he was just calm, cool, and collected. My brain didn't have the relationship space with him. And so I didn't enter it. But I'm sure you could relate to this. My wife may be annoyed at me. I may be annoyed at her. But the relationship space that we have, it is so homey. It's like chicken foot soup. Someone say, yuck. It's like some really good cornmeal porridge. It's like some comfort food that I could slip in there anytime. Even when I'm angry, even when she's annoyed, I could slip in there and it becomes really easy because the space is long established. You know what? That space was there when we just got married and we didn't have anything and we lived on the fifth floor. It existed when we used to have to push the car to go do our laundry. It existed when our baby girl got cancer. It existed when, deep into our marriage and our youngest was 10 years old and she looked at me and says, I'm pregnant. I said, what? Why, I didn't tell you guys that? Yes. My 19-year, he was 10 or 11, and then all of a sudden, Addison, who is 8, came along. We have an 8-year-old. It existed in all the transition. It existed when loss of job came, and we said, we're going to figure it out. We're going to figure it out. I said, don't worry about it. If I have to work overtime, figure it out, you'll never have to worry about it, I promise you. It existed when I feel exhausted and I'm stretched to the limit, and she comes alongside me and says, I'll take all of this off your plate. The same thing happens in our faith community. We actually struggle a great deal because the space doesn't exist. And you cannot make a space during conflict. The space has to be a pre-existing space. You missed that one. It has to be a space that existed before the rift, before the brokenness, before the crisis, before the trauma, before the drama, before the loss of job, before the illness. If the space didn't exist, it's going to become very difficult to build a plane while you're flying it. And that's why it's critically important for us to teach institutions, organizations, individuals, and families that the first order of business, they said culture is king. And right, either you make it or it will make itself. And so the first order of business is to really ask yourself a serious question. How do we want to be when we get together? How do we want to be? That's a big question I ask. How do we want to be when we get together? And so for me, when a staff person, for example, really cut at another one, I'm going to sit down with that person and I'm going to say, I want you to tell me about what happened. Because it makes me feel uncomfortable, it makes me feel concerned if this is how we're treating each other. And it's critically important for us, right? We have a responsibility to the community. And sometimes we waiting for leadership to check people or to figure it out. And sometimes you have to do it, right? Nosotros, right? Those who are together, the laity, the brothers and sisters must be able to develop, because no one person builds culture. In fact, I would argue that it's impossible for the pastor alone to build the culture.
Absolutely.
You have to build that culture together. And so we have to, as someone, I pastored a church for 20 years, and can I just tell you, and there's always stuff, but what I discovered along the way is that those, especially those sisters in my church, and the brothers too, they really built the culture with me. I led the way, but they also came alongside, and they built the culture. And so that's a big part of the work. How are we going to be when we are together? And that's not something that happens overnight. It's built with great intentionality.
That's a ball. That was so brilliant. I think also, as you use the term relationship space, I also feel that we cannot create that relationship space on Sunday
Right.
because we're here to have a relationship with the Holy Spirit.
Right.
So
Say something.
I think that it's almost insane for us to believe that we come to church for 2 hours, some 45 minutes, and
45 minutes.
and then the focus of it is just give him the praise, just give him the glory.
Yeah.
We're lifting hands, right? And so I'm not really focusing on you. I'm focusing on worshiping him. And then when it's done, you know, we interact. So the truth be told, I think we also have to give ourselves credit that we've come a long way.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, I think that it's important for us to understand that that happens even like now. Shared stories,
That's
shared
right. That's right.
experiences.
That's right.
I think this is creating relationship space.
That's right.
Like last week, I came down and said to Natalie, hey, listen, I'm working on my kitchen outside. You know, I need another chopping board. I'm sure you ordered it. I'm sure it's on my way to my house already. 12569. I know. Right? Now, before I was like, I don't need to tell nobody. Look, did I need to tell her about my chopping board? No. I could order on Amazon myself. But I wanted her to have a shared experience.
Shared experience.
If she's going to have shared chicken, she has to have a shared experience. Now, I still have to say this, that like the men are going bowling this weekend. It's those moments. Like, I'll tell you something about myself, that I hate the fact that people just see me as bishop, as pastor. There's so much more to me
Yes.
that this title and these positions,
Yeah.
it hides and blocks. Right? And so even the children, I hear the stories of the children having dance rehearsal. When they're finished, they don't want to know if they gave God the glory. They don't want to know if God was edified. They want to know, what did Bishop think about this? Is that true? That's what I think about. So there's something wrong with that. I don't think I give myself off as some person that is, doesn't love the children. But what I'm saying is that, but authority is good though, because you know what? My wife always tells me, we'll walk through the airport, wherever I'm walking to a room, people are always staring at me. I don't know what they're looking at. I don't know what it is. No, I don't know what they're looking at.
It's your white shoe.
Whether we're in the airport, whether in a restaurant, and all the children always tell me, so do you see how they're always staring at you? Well, let's move on to the next story. But I think that going about building relationships, it takes us taking time. Let's go out. Let's have some chicken wings. There's prayer time, and churches are built upon, let's fast, let's do this, do that. And then people are praying, but they're not building relationship with each other. Number two, I'm thinking about the disciples, right? When Jesus is about to give up his life,
Yeah.
they're wondering who's going to be the greatest. And then John calls himself the disciple whom Jesus loved. Like if I was there, he'd make me sick to my stomach,
The one
right?
who really loves.
Because it's like, the one who leaning on Jesus' bosom. I'm like, bro, stand up, man. Get yourself together. Stop being so needy. That's my personality. And Peter probably felt the same way, right? Peter was very, always got to say something. And, everyone, but each personality had its place because it wasn't John that stood up on the day of Pentecost. It was Peter that stood up on the day of Pentecost. And so I think that when it comes to this community, church community, we are expecting something
Yeah.
that's not, this is not the environment. If we're going to have this relationship that we want, we're going to have more than just church time.
Right. Can I say two things on that? One is, and I'll give, a few weeks ago I met with the leadership, and I serve as the executive pastor of my local church. And I met with the leadership, and what I did was, and I do this like every quarter, I go around the room and I just ask them, how are you doing? That's it. That's the question I ask. I just ask the question and you'll be surprised. And then we conduct business. The business is this much of the time, and the how you're doing is this much of the time. Seriously. And I have to tell you, like we did one maybe about a month or so ago, and I'm so fascinated. I'm glad you said what you just said. Like they said you could be on a mountain alone and not feel alone. And you could be in a crowded room and feel all alone. And as I sat there and I listened, these are people that I see very often, not as often as I used to because I have my other responsibilities of speaking elsewhere now. But I've known these people for a very long time. It's incredible how all of us could come together every single Sunday and know very little about each other. Isn't it true? And the reason why I say that is, as I sat there and I listened in, I said, oh my God, there's so many things that people are dealing with that we know how to put on a good suit and some good shoes. And we know how to come, and Bishop is right. There's a particular story that emerges in this space. And some of the other stories are not appropriate for this space. Some of the other stories cannot come forward in this space. Some of the other stories don't belong in this space. And so what you have to do is you have to create other spaces for those stories to emerge. Those stories can't emerge in clapping and singing and praising and shouting or greeting each other afterwards. Those stories have to take place at the bowling alley. You know, like when you say, let's see who is it. Right? I did a workshop on play, and I have one coming up. And Plato says that you could learn, this is what Plato said. You hear what he said? Plato said you could learn more about a person with an hour of play than with 1 year of conversation. That's what Plato says. You could learn more about a person from 1 hour of play than 1 year of conversation. So like going bowling, I'm going to see your competitive side. I'm going to see that child comes back out, and that's going to be an opportunity for us to bond. And we'll tell those stories, and we'll create new ones, and we'll create new ones. And so part of that health and wholeness that you're talking about as well, that doesn't happen through being serious either. It's being vulnerable and taking risks with each other. Is that the end of it, Bishop?
Thank you, Dr. Ball.
Let-
We put our hands together.
Let me, oh,
Thank you so much.
yeah.
You were blessed.
Yeah, can you?
If you were blessed, go into that shared space on Zelle and give an offering, please. We certainly appreciate your love and support. God bless you. Thank you all so much for participating. God bless you.